Hello guys and welcome back to the PT Education Podcast. This is episode number 95. With my lovely co-host Daniel Green. How you doing, mate?
All good.
I used both your names there today.
You did, yeah.
Tonight, everyone should know who you are because you are a
Well,
legend.
hopefully. Well, they do now.
Absolute legend.
Give out my address,
Daniel
birthday
Green.
if you want,
I mean,
credit
it's a
card
common
number.
name, so you're all right, aren't you? There's a lot of Daniel Greens. Unlike
Yeah, I know.
James
It's
Shives,
disappointing.
there's only one of me,
There's only one of you.
as we know. So I'm a rare commodity.
You got a rare
And you're
name,
quite common.
and I'm a rare
You're a commoner.
person.
You're a commoner.
Common name, rare person.
Is that what you say, is it?
Whereas you've got a rare name, but you're just common
Just
person.
common, just
Loads
common,
of you
common,
about.
like-
Loads of you running about.
Loads of you, boy.
No, it's been good, mate. Good
Yeah.
to get back into this. Oh, fucking hell, I've just fucked up what I said we're going to do. Obviously, we're now a week behind,
Yeah.
but I don't care. It's good to get back into structure and
Yeah.
rhythm after holiday. I really enjoyed the holiday. Really nice downtime, really nice to relax. Bit of reflection as we speak about in last week's podcast about New Year's resolutions and that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to go back into that. But nice to just get back into a rhythm, see my clients again. They're sort of just wanting to reflect, take stock of things. Some people just cracking on with what they were doing before. But for me, just get back into structure, get back into training, get back to my yoga tomorrow. Actually, all stuff I'm looking forward to. So as much as the break was nice, the structure coming back is nice.
Yeah.
But mate, how are you? And more importantly, this is the week after. How was your retreat?
Yeah, so I'm good, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a really good kind of relaxing period for me and beneficial for my well-being in so many ways. I'm going to talk a little bit about the retreat in a second, actually. But routine you mentioned there, like everyone I work with, everyone functions better with some sort of structure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure we've said it plenty of times in the podcast, but we all need some sort of structure in life around our food, around our exercise, around anything around our sleep. Everything that impacts our well-being, we need some sort of structure there. No one's ever going to say, to get the best night's sleep, just do what you fancy. You're going to have a certain routine every night if you want to optimise your sleep or optimise your training. So there's anything in life that's important to you and you want to move the needle in that direction, you're going to need some structure to get there. Because without that, you're not going to go anywhere. And that's why most people enjoy this time of year for the structure. Obviously, January isn't always sunshine and rainbows in every shape and form, but back into a routine, back into life, and hopefully people feel a bit more rested, a bit more recharged. And I certainly do for a host of reasons, as I alluded to, but one being I've been away for a silent retreat for a few days, which was incredibly impactful, very insightful, very calming, very therapeutic. And I'm going to sort of share some key reflections and some key sort of psychological dots that I've been connecting today that anyone who wants to improve their health and their well-being will definitely get a lot of value from, I feel. So that's me, mate.
Yeah. It was the opposite of my New Year's.
Yeah, well, you were out and about getting smashed.
I was out and about.
Out and about on town.
In bed by one, though.
Being common.
Yeah, being common, but a legend. But
Common legends.
I forget this is all going back on YouTube now, isn't it? We've got
Great.
stop
Brilliant.
fucking about.
Yeah.
Well, no, carry on fucking about. No, yeah, I had the opposite one. In bed by one, though, so quite nice. But it was a good evening, but very different to yours.
Yes.
Not much thinking going on.
Yeah. I mean, you were just enjoying yourself, weren't you?
Yeah.
There's definitely a time and a place for that as well.
Oh,
but,
of course.
But for me, it's a lot more about developing my self-awareness, really looking at myself a little bit deeply, away from the distraction of the world, the noise of the world. And
I guess you had obviously you had no devices at all, did you?
no devices.
For 48 hours?
Pretty much. I mean, I didn't go back on social media for probably even longer than that. I was almost scared to go back on social media.
Yeah.
There was a part of me that was a bit like, do you really want to go back on this after this length of time? And I wasn't on it loads over the Christmas period as well, which was really good. So it was a little bit of a apprehension going back into the social media world. But
Did you check on your phone? Like when you're there?
No.
Like see if you had any calls or messages?
No. So quite a few people handed their devices in as soon as we got there on the retreat.
That's cool.
For me, the lady running it was like, do you want to hand your phone in, James? I said, look, my phone's going away, it's off, turned off, not even on airplane mode, turned off, and I will not be looking at it this whole retreat. And I wanted to hold myself accountable, to have some discipline there, because I think if we're in the real world, I'm not going to have someone taking my phone off me, but I'm going to need to
Not willingly, anyway.
Not willingly,
Might nick it out your pocket.
It might nick it.
Yeah.
But it's just that little bit of discipline as well. On the
it's
retreat.
nice,
So going to it with intent. My intent was to really embrace the experience, everything about the experience. So, we went into silence about I think it was about 6, 7 o'clock or whatever on the Saturday evening. Silence ran all the way through Saturday, Sunday, into the Monday at about maybe 1 o'clock sort of time. So
It's nearly 48 hours.
yeah, it's not far off 48
Yeah.
hours, and we did a little bit of reflection on the Sunday evening just to check in with everyone, make sure everyone was all right. Just a quick little reflection on how everyone was feeling halfway through the silence, and then you're back into silence. And
So actually, just before you go into what you learned,
Yeah,
because
no.
obviously we're going to spend a lot of time doing that. I've never been on one, and I've never even heard. Well, I don't think I've even heard of them. And so maybe for the listeners, what do you do across those 40 hours outside being quiet? What's
Yeah.
the structure of it?
So I'll give you an idea of the structure, and I'll give you an idea of the purpose as well.
Yeah.
And then I'll go a bit deeper.
Yeah.
So every silent retreat is probably run slightly differently and over different lengths of time. You do ones that go up to like 10 days. And there's pros, but there's definitely big cons to that as well. And a big philosophy from the retreat was to bring yourself into silence and calm, but bring yourself back into the real world without too much resistance. So that's why doing it for a short time was, in the opinions of the instructor, quite a beneficial way to do it. So what we would do is, or what we did, was to get there in the evening, and you're winding down as soon as you get there. So you go into silence, you're in a kind of circle, you're doing some meditation, doing some breathing, and you're into silence. So then there'll be plenty of food laid out. There's snacks and there's really good quality meals laid out. And everything is done in 100% silence. Straight away you slow down. Straight away you're more mindful about the food you put on your plate, about the speed you eat. I didn't feel stressed. I didn't feel any increase of tension in my body the whole 48 hours. Most of the time you have little things that will stress you or excite you or upregulate your system. I was almost in pretty much 98% of the time in a parasympathetic rest and digest state. Very calm. You naturally move slower. So then we would have an evening meal. We would read a lot. Reading was something I don't think I've ever read so much in my life. And then you would, you'd go to bed and you'd wake up in the morning with maybe some meditation. Every morning we'd do a hike. So we did a 3-hour hike around the Seven Sisters. That's around Eastbourne area. Beautiful. And the following morning we did a 2-hour hike. And then throughout the day, you're eating your meals really peacefully and calmly. You're reading, bit of yoga, bit of meditation. And that's it. It goes pretty quickly. And you and me were talking about before as if I might be a bit apprehensive, but actually I didn't find it difficult. I felt it very calming and therapeutic. But as you know, and I've shared on the podcast, I had done quite a lot of work and investment on myself last year. So I felt like I was in a reasonable place going into the retreat.
With the yoga, was that silent, or is the instructor talking?
So the
you're just talking.
So the instructor would talk throughout some guided meditation.
Right.
Obviously, a certain meditation where there's just pure silence.
Yeah.
The yoga, she would guide us as well.
Right.
And then at the beginning of the walk, she would just give us a debrief on what's going to happen in the walk. And that was it. The rest of the time, it takes away the fluff. So if you're with a group of strangers, there's naturally that kind of fluff of conversation. Where have you travelled from? What do you do? All that sort of stuff. That was all gone. So all you can do is to be present and engaged. But weirdly, you still felt connected to people at the end of the process, even though we didn't talk until the last hour or two of the whole retreat. So that's the general template of it. And the reasons for it, for me personally, was to layer on some of the personal development I'd done last year, maybe see where my mind was going to go with pure peace, no distraction, no external noise. And when you don't have any external noise, you might become more aware on the internal noise, because this is all like food for your brain. So as soon as you pick up your phone, there's noise, there's food coming to your brain. As soon as you turn the TV on, there's food. It can be nutrient dense, organic, quality food, or it could be McDonald's food. Maybe if I turn my phone on and look at social media, maybe there's some McDonald's food. How's your body going to feel if you're constantly giving it McDonald's every day?
Pretty good.
Pretty amazing. How's your mind going to feel if you're giving it McDonald's every day? So it's quite a good sort of metaphor to think about that, about who you surround yourself with, the conversations you have. Is it pessimistic people? Is it the news? Is it the media? And then your internal dialogue. Are you constantly fusing with negative stuff, negative narratives, reoccurring, unhelpful narratives about yourself? Once you clear the noise, you become very much aware on your internal dialogue, your thoughts, your emotions, some of the things that you might have suppressed. We all suppress stuff thoughts, emotions, because we can't constantly wear our heart on our sleeves, but to give ourselves some chance and some space to think, hang on, you know what? Last year was quite difficult for these things. I do need to acknowledge how it's making me feel, and there's some thoughts that I'm still wrestling with. Can I do a better job at letting those uncomfortable things go, but bringing some positivity into my mind, some great things, some gratitude, some clarity about being present and connected in the current moment. All the things I've kind of talked about in the podcast for the last 95 episodes, for me, it was doing that work on myself. It's all well and good me sat here talking about it. Am I going away and doing the work? And, people have to take my word for this, really. I feel so good for the work that I did last year. And I feel really good for spending almost 48 hours in pure silence. It was so insightful, so introspective, and so rewarding.
Think you'll do it again?
It was difficult as a father. It's time away from my daughter. It was quite a length of time and investment in myself. I don't know if I will or not, really. It's you have to really want to make this time, and we all get a certain amount of time off each year and a certain amount of income or expenditure to spend on ourselves. So we've got to think maybe I might invest time and money on myself differently this year. Maybe a different type of holiday or a different type of experience. But I suppose I can take the philosophy and the value of silence into my life the best I can, see the value in creating some calm and some stillness, even if it is just for 10 minutes, even if it is just to focus on my breath as I'm walking or the steps that I'm doing. And when you experience that for a prolonged period of time, you really see the value in it. It's like, God, I feel good for this. I was driving home, I don't ever felt so calm. Right. I actually didn't even turn the radio on for the first half an hour. And then I was like, well, I'll get some tunes on now. Back into the real world. Down the pub, down the boozer.
Smashing the tyre in front, road rage.
Yeah, exactly.
Kicked off.
Yeah. But yeah, I was really calm and felt really good. And parts of it is having that awareness to bring yourself back in. So constantly when I was in this place of silence, my mind was going. Thoughts were going and going. And that's fine, that's normal. And then I had to remind myself, bring yourself back into the beautiful countryside. Bring yourself back into the food you're eating. Bring yourself back into the breath. Bring yourself back into the calm. It's constant practice. And the instructor, she said to us, this will take practice. She practiced about 20 times. She said it's a never-ending skill to be able to bring yourself into the moment. And I think when I started meditation and learning more about mindfulness, there was that normal kind of naivety around it, as in, I kind of got this figured. I understand the theory, understand the philosophy around it, understand the logic around it. But to actually truly practice it is a totally different thing. And again, this is just, even the work that I've done, I still feel like I'm scraping the surface of what my mind could be capable of, and the kind of calm and the happiness that I can create internally. We've done a podcast on happiness, and we find actually it's inside us all the time. We just let the world bombard us with information and think we're not happy. We have a choice whether or not to be happy, and that was unlocking that a little bit as well.
Present thing's an interesting one. It's one of the things I really tried to do when we were in America, and we did some trails when we were up in the mountains. There were a couple of beautiful ones as well, and it's easy to get distracted and your mind to wander to future, what you have for dinner, or past, or stuff going on at home. Or some of the trails were quite tricky, actually, which was quite nice because then you actually had to concentrate on walking, because you were actually climbing up and going over rocks, over rivers and things. So there was a presence there, because otherwise you could be fucked.
Yeah. So best vacation, mate.
Yeah. Otherwise, but when we were just walking through this beautiful scenery, I had to keep reminding myself to take it in, because it's so easy, isn't it, just to become complacent or just smash out the walk, come back, get back to where you're staying.
Yeah.
It's a real skill. It's really fucking difficult, isn't it?
Very hard. You have to constantly check yourself in, and your mind does drift off.
Yeah.
Part of meditation isn't just to stay in that kind of pure mindful place. It's the mind will drift off. I think even if you're a monk, been doing it for 20 years, their minds still go, and then they just develop the skill of bringing themselves back into the moment. They've practiced it and refined that skill so much. And yeah, I mean, we went around the Seven Sisters. You've done Seven Sisters? Have you around the Explorer? It's beautiful. You're sort of up and down the sort of coastline. It's
just up on Beachy Head?
Yeah, Beachy Head.
So I've been up to there, but I haven't done the whole walk. But it's lovely up there.
Absolutely stunning. And I remember the first time I did it, which was over 10 years ago now, and I loved it, but I took it as very much like a workout. Yeah. Workout, smash it out, tab it out, very much in this kind of military mindset. And when we were doing the walk, I was I could kind of hear other people.
Don't worry, we can still keep going.
And when we were doing the walk, I could kind of hear other people walking. And what I realised was that it was my ego.
Yeah.
And I was judging other people. They're quite slow, or they're this and they're that. Their timekeeper's a bit bad, this and that. And I was just like, all these judgments, it's all my ego, all of my ego. And once I started to be really aware of my reactions and see how strong my ego really is and how much it dictates me and dictates my behaviours and my responses, I started to get a bit calmer. I was like, actually, why do I have to walk so fast? Why not walk a bit slower? Why do you have to be front of the pack? Back off a little bit. Don't let your ego drive you. And that was very therapeutic, just to check in on myself. And I realised so much of my life and my responses in life, I think it is a human trait. It's our ego responding. It's a trigger because our ego makes us feel that it fights against our identity of who we think we are. And anything that fights against our identity of who we think we are, we respond to that with emotion. And sometimes we don't always respond in the most rational or calmest way.
Yeah. And did you? So you didn't do any, say, training necessarily, like as in gym training.
No,
it was all very much
yoga,
meditation.
Yeah.
And were there big times when you were on your own, just completely on your own, or did you spend a lot of the day like within a group?
Yeah, it's because often you're in solitude, but you're around others.
Right.
But there was some rooms you could go into where you could get pretty much be on your own or with one other person. So you know that they're in the room with you, but you still feel very much in solitude because of that silence. You feel very connected with yourself. So yeah, not loads of time purely on your own. You're around other people, which gives you this kind of balance between solitude but also connection, which is so therapeutic. You still feel connected even though you're not talking to people, just to be around people and know that they're all in the same sort of mindful headspace and they're all on this journey together. And people didn't go into too much detail when they reflected, but you could tell a lot of people in the group were on their own journey, had been through their own life struggles and their own life difficulties, especially in the previous year, and they wanted to do something for their health, their well-being and their development. And everyone found it really, I mean, there was tears afterwards for some of the people. That was just me. Yeah. As I said, I'm very fortunate for the work that I've done before, the breath works, the sound baths, the meditation, the yoga, a lot of stuff last year kind of put me in a good place for it. But I mean, I'd recommend a silent retreat for anyone, but I'd recommend everyone tries to find some silence and some solitude in their life. For some people, I said it might just be 3 minutes of breath work while they're on the train. For some people, they might be able to get 10 minutes. Some people might be able to find half an hour. I don't know. But just finding that space and seeing it as essential as your gym workout, see it's essential as eating well. It's another element to your well-being that if you worked out how much time you spend on your phone and you just took 10 minutes off of that, how much difference would 10 minutes of your phone make? You'd probably be all right taking 10 minutes away from your phone. Put that 10 minutes into just some breathing. Just breathing. Just focus on the in and out with breath. So many different ways to meditate. Thousands of different ways to meditate. Just connecting with something consciously in that moment is so impactful for your well-being. And I just can't bang that drum loud enough to be fair. And it was interesting because from the outside, some people have said this stuff seems like a big luxury and a really a kind of quite extravagant thing to do in some ways. And I can understand that perspective when people talk about counselling, developing mental health, even physical fitness. But I think sometimes we're in quite an old school mentality. I think we think about how we are now in our modern world. We're still very conditioned from the previous generation because it's the previous generation that brought us up. So my parents were born in 1950s, 1954. So I've been brought up by people who were born in the 50s and grew up in the 60s. So that's influenced my psychology. And it's only been very recently in human evolution that we've gone from a survival state to a thriving state. Only recently are we trying to thrive. We're still in the attitude of, oh, well, do you need to do all this? Well, yeah, we do, because we're trying to thrive now. We're trying to maximise our life. We can now talk about fulfilment and satisfaction and trying to find true happiness. For most of human civilization, we probably just want to go on the next day, get a food, get a shelter, and get some reproduction going if we can.
Yeah.
Simples, but it was survival. We're not so much in survival for the majority of us. It's about thriving now. So the conversation around well-being and mental health needs to grow as we grow as humans.
Yeah. There's a couple of... I want to go back to people maybe finding that time on their own, and you obviously spoke about the discipline of you wanted your phone with you, actually, not because you want to use it, but the discipline of you were not going to use it, not the fact it wasn't there was going to stop you using it.
Yeah.
But maybe if you find that too difficult to start with and you need a bit of break, to go on a walk on your own without your phone.
Yeah.
Now, whether you go somewhere like nice in nature, maybe you just leave it in the car, or you do what you do and actually turn it off.
Yeah.
So then you've got to go through the extra aggro of turning it on. Or if you can
Great
go on a
tip.
nice walk near home, go on your own without your phone.
Great tip.
You're creating a silence, aren't you? You're basically giving yourself no option. And then maybe as you get better at it, you can go, well, I can take my phone because I won't look at it,
Yeah.
etc., etc. But maybe to start, you have to initially make it where you can't talk. You're on your own, you haven't got your phone, and you're just going for a quick walk.
Yeah.
But
or you could even break it down smaller than that and go, right, you can go for a walk, you're going to allow yourself to listen to a podcast or some music, but you're going to say, look, just 10 minutes of this walk, even if time it if you need to on your phone or your walk.
Yeah.
So you give yourself 10 minutes of just mindful walking. Just 10 minutes.
So once
That's
your podcast and music's on, don't look at your phone again.
Yeah, but I'm saying turn the podcast off as well.
Oh, yeah.
So you're not going all or nothing.
Yeah, okay,
So you
yeah.
can go, right, I'm going to go out, you listen to some music, podcast, love it, but within that half an hour walk or hour walk, whatever,
Go silent.
Just 10 minutes. Give
Yeah.
yourself 10 minutes to go, like, I'm going to walk in silence. I'm going to really be mindful of my breathing or the way that my feet hits the floor or whatever. Something that you can pay attention to that's present and not distracted or constantly consuming stuff. And that's it's a nice place to start, and it's just really hard to sell the value of that because that can seem, again, what's the point of it? But you're training your brain to become more present. You're training your brain to be calmer. You're training your brain to be less distracted. And we've talked about it in so many different ways in the podcast. And this is a vital psychological skill if you want to improve your well-being, your concentration, your relationships, your mental health, your emotional health, your self-awareness. This skill helps with all that.
Yeah.
It's sort of, if you could take one pill that does all that, the pill wouldn't exist, would it? But actually that pill can help with so many things. It's amazing how much more connected you can feel to others when you're more connected to yourself. Because your degree of your ability to connect with others or develop relationships with others or even love others is purely dependent on your relationship with yourself. And if you're wrestling with constant painful emotions or thoughts of the past or worries of the future, low self-worth, low self-esteem, really being very defeatist in your attitude, all these psychological challenges and struggles that we all have in some shape or form, they can smudge your reality. Once your reality gets smudged, your relationships get smudged, and the depth and the connection is then less, and then that again knocks on negatively to you and the people around you. So doing this will compound in other areas of your life and benefit you in literally everything from your sleep to your personal relationships to your professional career.
And you mentioned extravagant. You don't have to tell us how much it was. Is it expensive to do this sort of thing?
£500 for a weekend. That's all food. That's the instructor.
That's obviously sleep.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
staying.
Yeah. You've got, So yeah, I mean that was a fair price. You could pay more, pay less. Some of the females were in a dorm, so they would have paid less, and one person had a bit of an ensuite, might have paid a little bit more.
Where were you?
I just like a little private
Under the
room.
stars.
I wasn't allowed in the female dorm. Look, come in here, mate. Well, yeah, I won't get that.
You weren't allowed in the male dorm either.
Yeah, exactly. I was just saying,
Where'd you want me to sleep?
I class myself as a female, but I'm not going down that road.
No, don't go down that road. No, we don't come.
Let's not go down that path.
We don't cover this on
no,
this.
we don't go down those paths. But it was.
But you think it's not too bad at all. If you go stay in a nice hotel, it's going to be 250 quid a night.
Exactly.
And you're getting all the other stuff with it: the classes, the food,
and you were on this
walks.
beautiful farm. We had like donkeys. I had like all the food was homegrown, organic.
Nice.
From the chickens, you had the eggs, you had all the fresh vegetables. The food was incredible. The standard food was amazing, and just a thoroughly enjoyable few days. But you do have to see. You have to see the value in anything, whether it's 10 minutes of mindfulness, whether it's a retreat, whether it's a personal trainer, coach. You have to see the value in it before you invest in something. And I suppose we don't invest in anything before we see the value in it. And we have to sometimes be a bit open-minded to how things can add value to our lives.
Yeah. That is when people. It's funny when people get confused with value, and so they go, "It's too expensive for this," or "It's too expensive for that." And you go, "Well, First of all, let's have some context, and people value things differently. So your opinion on what is valuable might be different to mine.
Yes.
So when it does slightly frustrate me as I get older, people go, it's not worth that. Well, how have you come up with that equation? You know, what context have you given to whether something's, first of all, worth it or not? Because if you've never done, let's use the example, any research into silent retreats, we don't know if that's a lot of money or not.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is the value. If you value that and get loads from it, well, then you've got your fucking fair exchange.
You can say it's quite cheap.
Well,
The value that I got from it, I mean, I would say that was the value that I've got from a personal perspective to how I've started this year.
Yeah.
Probably some of the best money I've ever spent.
But actually, even if you compare it and do give it some context and go, you went and stayed in 2 nights in a hotel, actually you've got less in the hotel anyway.
Yeah.
So actually it's really good value, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah. So it was great, and different retreats will vary, of course.
Offer different things, yeah.
Another chance on the retreat is it's getting off the treadmill of life.
Yeah.
Now we're all on this constant treadmill, and whether we realise it or not, we are. And I suppose to go a little bit deeper on this, I've talked a lot about our previous and past experiences on the podcast and how these experiences have moulded us, whether we like it or not, especially when we're young children. And they've kind of formed like a sat-nav in your mind that's subconsciously pushing you down a path, influencing all your choices and decisions and behaviours are actually from this sat-nav in your mind that's been grown and developed from your past. When you get off the treadmill and you create some calm and some stillness, or maybe even if you're on holiday like you've reflected on, you're away from the daily life, you have a chance to, whether you like, is reflection. But I'm going to go deeper in this to be introspective and question your life a little bit in a healthy, open way. Question your beliefs, question your responses, question your behaviours, and just to think a little bit deeply, because they are so hardwired and so rooted in our past that if we go straight back into the world without any real deep introspection, you're just back into the autopilot again. And all that happens is people repeat the same cycles over and over again, because ultimately their perception of themselves, their perception of others or the world hasn't really changed, because they haven't looked deep enough at what's really going on in their mind. And I suppose they haven't really looked deep enough on their past, which is really normal. Who's going to look at your past unless you see the value of that? But your past is, you are your past. Everything about how your brain is wired, everything about how you predict. The brain is a predictive being. It's a predictive mechanism in your brain all the time. Now we think about pain, we think about movement, coordination, everything's prediction. Prediction is based upon what I've already learned. If I don't start to see how my previous experiences have affected how I've learned, affected my perceptions, I can't truly change. And that might, in some context, limit my fulfillment, limit my reward and value and sense of purpose and what I get from life.
But you just chill out. You chill out for 2 weeks. You start to wind down. It's more relaxing, depending on what sort of holiday you've gone on. But let's say it's a relaxing holiday, which most people tend to choose, don't they? So you have a really nice holiday. You have some nice food. You get some proper sleeping because you're a bit more relaxed. Everyone else is. And then you come back, and a week later, you feel as fucked as you did before you came on holiday. Yeah. Because the thing is, yes, taking a break is amazing and new experiences are amazing. But if your life got you into that state in the first place and you haven't reflected on that, having 2 weeks away from life isn't the long-term solution. It's very short-term, isn't it?
Such a fantastic point.
Because lots of people make that mistake.
Yeah, because it's a comfortable narrative to go, you know what, let's not really address with anything. Because addressing stuff and looking at yourself, it's hard. Looking at your relationships, looking at your health, looking at your financial situation, looking at that. You might see it. You might see yourself and see your partner and see your physical health in some shape and forms. But to really, truly look at it deeply, to look really introspectively or look critically at something, is painful. It's easier for me to go, you know what, I'll figure it out. Once we go on holiday, we'll chill out, we'll relax, we'll feel much better. You're right, you will feel much better for those 2 weeks you're on a holiday. And as you said, as soon as you come back, because you haven't reflected, you don't really change, you haven't had those uncomfortable conversations. Because let's think about the relationship side of things. Who wants to have an uncomfortable relationship conversation on holiday?
Yeah.
Sod that. Then you get back, the kids are going crazy, you're stressed, you're tired. Who wants to have an uncomfortable relationship conversation when you're stressed and you're tired? So you never have it. So it's under the carpet. You suppress. And then you are constantly wrestling with this subconscious resentment, anger, frustration. These are normal. Everyone has this. Everyone's partner is going to rub them up the wrong way and frustrate them. That's part of being human. If you and me spent a long period of time together, we'll probably piss each other off at some stage, I'm sure.
Don't.
All right? That's why they spend so much time together. All right, we have to limit it. That's why a podcast is
It's an hour.
It's short.
We wish we an hour and a half.
It'd be down to 5 minutes per year, isn't it? But no, anyone's you spend a period of time with people, that's okay. And if you wanted to develop that relationship and you're living with someone, you'd have to try to, if you try and develop a healthy dynamic, is to open up the conversation. We're going to frustrate each other. That's okay. If I frustrate you, you don't have to share everything with me, every single thought. But if you can communicate in a healthy, secure way, when you do this, I appreciate it's probably some of my stuff and some of my past, but when you do this, it does actually irritate me a little bit. Maybe you can laugh and joke about it, but by just opening up on that, then I'm not holding on to that resentment anymore. And then my partner can do the same. And then we don't wrestle with this subconscious stuff that we're suppressing. And then when we go on a holiday, we feel a bit more relaxed. We feel more secure with our relationship. And we can come back and we can grow and have a better quality of life, because we know the quality of your life is dictated from the quality of your relationships. Sounds like a lovely quote, but we know we have actual evidence, hardcore evidence now, to back that statement up.
Science, can't argue with science.
Well, it's a longitudinal study over 70 years to say, look, the people with the best health, the best well-being, the best long-term outcomes have quality, secure relationships. Because if your relationships are crap, everything else deteriorates. And if I go deeper than that, if your relationship with yourself is crap, your behaviours will suffer. If I don't feel good about myself and I feel low self-worth, low self-esteem, am I worth spending an hour in the gym now? Am I really worth it? What's the point? Is it worth eating healthy? Is it worth investing time into myself? If I feel so low about myself, I don't see the value of investing in James. But when I see the value, because I know that I'm worth it, then my relationship with me is strong, and guess what? Then I have a better relationship with others, I make better decisions, better choices, and my health and well-being improves.
Yeah, a lot of people used to think that the Mediterranean diet was what kept people in that area of the world strong and healthy and less heart issues. But actually, having gone back and reflected on that, there's a lot of sort of people that research that area actually talk about it's everything. So you've got the climate, but you've also got the relationships they have with family and how much time they spend with family, the fact that they're very chilled out, they have siestas. But one of the big things I was reading, it's a couple of years ago now, but they were talking about the relationships from that area. When you look at especially the Italians and the Spanish, in the evening, they go out with some family and they spend time together and they relax. And so their relationship and their unit just looks like a really happy place to be, and they really sort of get a lot of value from that. So it used to be just, the Mediterranean diet, but there's so much more. It's the whole lifestyle down there. I thought it was a really interesting point that I can't remember. I don't think it was research. I think it was an article. But it's a really interesting article to look at, sort of more holistic than just go, it's the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah, and I love that for so many reasons. And it's an intrinsic human need for love and connection with other human beings. We need that for survival. It's a big driver in us. And when we do feel connected, it's amazing how much calmer we feel. Everything just feels a little bit slower, a little bit calmer. And I was listening to a podcast on sleep, actually, on Chris Williamson's podcast, and he was going a bit more holistically with it, and he was talking a lot about food and nutrients, and then going back another layer about how about your relationships and how that affects your sleep. And he was saying, actually, if you want the best night's sleep, sit down with your partner or your children and try and have food over the table and eat a bit slower and calmer. He goes, when you've got that connection, it drops you into that calmer parasympathetic state known as the rest and digest state, and then you're digesting things better, your whole system is calm. And we know if we want optimal sleep, we need to be in a calm place, a calm state. So of course the opposite is true. When you've got very problematic, difficult relationships, that could be incredibly stressful and create a stress response as well. And we know relationships aren't all sunshine and rainbows, so I want to add that as a strong caveat to this. But if you can feel connected to your loved one and you can sit there, have a nice meal together, how much calmer do you feel when you're out with your girlfriend and you're having a meal and you're talking and you're really being mindful about your eating, as opposed to rushing home, smashing a meal down you, putting on Peaky Blinders, watching someone's head get blown off. It's all good fun, but what one do you feel more kind of connected and sort of calmer with?
Not necessarily in a restaurant, but here.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, like here.
Restaurant might stress you out.
Yeah, no, but and not that it relaxes me. I wouldn't say I notice much difference, but if I'm sitting at the table, I think it's nice thing. So we've got a breakfast bar here. So when we sit up at the breakfast bar, it's nice because you're not watching TV. So you're not watching telly. So you're not just both facing that way watching telly. We're obviously both facing this way, but you can then eat. You haven't got the distraction, which means you then tend to talk and maybe you slow down. So yeah, that point, 100%.
Yeah, that is the point.
That is the point. Yeah. In the restaurant, I'm just distracted by the shit going on.
Yeah. Maybe that's not.
But no, obviously the point. No, the point you make is a perfectly relevant one. They see it especially with families.
Yes.
Like with kids.
Yeah.
And not just all sitting in front of the TV, but sitting down and I know obviously it'll still be really good for a relationship, but sitting down, having dinner around the table, catching up with your day, knowing how parents' day gone, how's the kids' day gone, not being distracted by the telly, as you say, being in rest and digest because you're in that place, not having fast food, so actually you can start to say salivate and look forward to your food.
Yeah.
I mean, all these things add together, don't they, to create a much nicer experience. It's actually a bit like when you go to a nice restaurant. When you go to a nice restaurant, and it is quite calming then because it doesn't tend to be super busy, but also the timing between the courses and just looking at the menu and seeing what's coming. Actually, it does create a far better experience, doesn't it? Than, like you say, just grabbing food and literally chucking it down.
I mean, they're trying to create a real amazing ambience, aren't they?
Which does rest you out. It does chill you out.
It does, yeah, definitely. If you go to somewhere a little bit cheaper, it's going to be a little more fast paced. Get food
KFC
down,
wings flying at you.
Get out, and you get what you pay for in life, don't you? But seeing the value in that. And, these are all things that I'm not saying it's wrong to eat a meal in front of the TV and stuff like that. But if you can find time to sit down, it can be on your own as well. It hasn't got to be with someone. So slow down how you're eating, be more present and engaged. Which I'm also going to say I find very difficult and can be challenging. But when I have done that, if I'm doing that with somebody else, I feel a lot better for it. As over Christmas, having some meals for somebody else and sitting there eating calmly and just enjoying the food and not thinking about TV or anything else. I felt really good for it, and then adding that into the silence was great because you literally are you eat so much quieter and slower and mindfully, and it was really really powerful, mate, and really enjoyable as well. Really. I suppose with this stuff as well, whether we think about silence or we think about meditation, we've talked about thoughts and emotions today a little bit, and they can become so all-consuming. And a big philosophy in meditation and psychology is to be able to sort of bring yourself almost above the thoughts and emotions and realise they just come and go. There's just thoughts. Emotions come and go, thoughts come and go. Some are maybe helpful, useful ones, and some are often maybe quite unhelpful and quite repetitive sometimes. If I can go above that, so we could call this the clear blue sky, and the thoughts and emotions being like the weather that changes all the time, especially in England. If I can see that clear blue sky that's always there, that is my calm place. That is James. That is my my sort of true self, I suppose. And it's hard to see that when we're all consumed with the busyness of the mind. So the skill of meditation or the skill of being present is to try and get that clarity of that clear blue sky away from the smudge of emotions and thoughts.
Yeah, it's a nice analogy. Is that a Headspace one?
That's been in Headspace. I've heard it in acceptance commitment therapy.
It's a great one.
I've heard it in loads. I've heard it in Buddhist monk philosophy.
Yeah.
I don't really know where it originated.
No.
I've heard it in so many. I might have even heard it in CBT, but I don't know. But I've definitely heard it in those other ones. So yes, it's
a great analogy.
It's
the
a great
point.
one. Yeah, to see that clear blue sky above it all. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. But we're fusing with them constantly all the time. With very little consciousness. And consciousness is a word that kind of came up quite a lot on the retreat, is to bring yourself back into being conscious. Like we are often on like a default way of thinking, a default way of behaving, and an autopilot.
Yeah.
I get it, and we need a bit of autopilot, but we were so ingrained in autopilot that we never stopped to jump off of that. And if we never stop to jump off of that, we have very little consciousness. Well,
if you stop.
If you stop, you create more consciousness,
yes,
aren't you?
Yeah.
That awareness to be a little bit stiller, a little bit slower and more conscious. But thinking of thoughts, thinking of that internal dialogue, maybe we become aware of what are we choosing to water, what we're choosing to put more fuel on. So I could go, you know what, right, I'm a right ugly bastard, and this and this and this unhelpful, horrible thoughts about myself. If I choose to water that through, I don't know, just unhelpful data or more negative thinking, I constantly think like that, water it, it's just going to grow, it's going to grow. Rather than, I'm not going to water that thought, that's an unhelpful thought that's popped into my mind. I choose to water this one, and this one's more helpful about who I am, the type of person I am, and whatever. That's a helpful thought, that's a useful thought. I'm going to put energy and focus into watering that. And that's like anything in life, isn't it? It's like what you choose to water in life is what grows. If you choose to water your health, that will grow. If you choose to water your relationships, they will grow. So you've got a bucket of water. Where do you want to put that water? It's quite a nice way to think about things.
It is. Some of my indoor plants, I water them. They do fuck all. Just
that's because you're doing something wrong, mate.
Yeah. Too much water.
Too much water. Yeah.
Too much water. Not enough water. Yeah. Would here. But no. Again, another good analogy, isn't it, to think through?
Yeah.
And it's when people expect to not water, not take care of an area, but they still want it to improve.
Yeah.
How much do we see that in health?
Yes.
Either mental health or physical health.
Yeah.
Giving it fuck all time, giving it fuck all investment, talking about value earlier and actually where you're going to invest your time. And is it extravagant or actually just investing in yourself to be the best version of yourself? It comes down to what your values are, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And actually but it's when people put fuck all time, thought and money into an area, still expect to improve, and then almost get frustrated when it doesn't.
Yeah.
You've got like
slightly entitled.
cognitive dissonance almost, haven't you? Where it's like you've got like what you're putting in something and what you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
They're not the same.
Yeah. Cognitive is almost like you can have this kind of like fight between your way of thinking and something's conflicting your way of thinking. And so you'd be like, well, I don't see why I should have to do this. There's lots of information saying you should do this. You might avoid it.
It's like an entitlement, isn't it?
Yeah, almost. Yeah. I suppose with psychology and thinking about modern life now, we talked about paradoxes before, haven't we?
Yeah.
And modern life is such a paradox, and I think it's interesting to look at the fact that we've actually got majority of the world, not parts of possible haven't got this, but we've got like a plentiful life, haven't we? We've got generally more abundance than we've ever had, haven't we? Think about technology, all the stuff we've got in our world. Yeah, in some ways we've got more mental suffering. It's like the paradox, like more suffering in the presence of plenty. That can be a difficult one to get your head around. And people are like, why? Why are we suffering more? Is it because we're more aware now? Is it something to do with our food? Is it something to do with our current way of living? I think the answers are multifaceted. But we need to acknowledge that in a lot of modern parts of the world, affluent parts of the world, there's a lot of mental suffering. And sometimes we can see more mental suffering in places of affluence than places that aren't as affluent, and different types of suffering, of course.
You see that in history with empires collapsing. Well, they collapse normally at a height.
Yeah.
They don't collapse when they got there.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the Roman Empire, it didn't collapse then.
Yeah.
And you get to this stage of plentiful.
Yeah.
And it's not as simplistic as this, of course, but it collapses there when you think, well, life's it's best now, effectively, for certain people. It's interesting, isn't it? When you haven't got any choice and you've just got to get on with it, you just go into survival mode.
Yeah.
Is it better for your mental health? I don't know if I want to say that. It'd be different, but actually that less not so much choice, and you've just got to crack on. Is that better for us? Because actually, a lot of the time, when you look back through history, it almost resets that point. Yeah. A lot of time. It's just an interesting thought.
Well, it's a very interesting thought, and I think I want this to come across compassionate and empathetic as well. But there is the opinion that hard times build strong, robust, resilient people, and then strong, robust, resilient people by default start to build easier times, and easier times potentially start to build slightly more vulnerable people. And it's far more complex than that, and I want that to come across as compassionately as possible, because they're all a product of our past. And when we look about our past, maybe it's a good few generations that have helped mould us, maybe not even just the previous one. So we need to look at that, but also need to look about our own past and our own childhood that I looked at discussed earlier, with some compassion and some empathy, to realise, the child you was just forming the sat-nav based upon survival, based upon defence, based upon just trying to cope with the environment you were in, whether there were some bigger traumas or some smaller traumas, some difficult situations. Every child has to navigate some difficult situations, and human beings will strive for survival, and children will do anything they can to seek attachment and seek living, essentially. So when we start to examine ourselves, trying to do that in an open, non-judgmental way is so important, because it's quite easy to look at your previous behaviours with regret, with judgment, and trying to be more compassionate. Go, okay, well, this is myself, this is who I was, and these are some of the reasons for it. And maybe you're not always happy with some of your previous behaviours, but once you choose to look at that, you probably see these mistakes. If you learn from them, I think I might have quoted this last week as well, but it turns from a regret that you hold on to a mistake that you've learned from.
Yeah. We did talk about that a lot, but it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Just recategorizing something. And also, people, you ever heard the saying, show me someone that hasn't made any mistakes and I'll show you someone that's never tried something.
Yes, you said that.
Yeah, you know, which is an interesting
I suppose also thinking of the child loss as well, though, is like child with children. You know, we're just trying to cope with
get through
with life and just to get through. But it's moulded us into the adults we are today. And if you're in a relationship, listen to this. It's moulded how you are in a relationship. And I only started to examine this now into my 30s, and more recently into my mid 30s, and later few years as well. So it's still really new to me. So I have empathy and compassion when this stuff might be new to people. But if you want to improve your health and well-being, you have to look at your relationships, and to do that, you've got to look at yourself. And the silent retreat was an opportunity for me to look at myself and to have that introspective lens, and maybe to look at my ego, look at my coping mechanisms, look at some of my thoughts and my emotions, and to be a little bit calmer and more mindful and clearer. Definitely my mindful is a bit clearer now, which is really nice.
Yeah, but I love a quote I want to throw out there just when we're talking about survival and things. It's the saying, which makes more and more sense to me as I get older: the devil creates work for idle hands. Therefore, the less you have to do, the more devilish thoughts you have, maybe to create something to do, or to create purpose, or to talk about something, or to do something, which you don't. And I see it in myself, just on a micro level, where if I've got a busy day, shit gets done, and I don't even think.
Yeah,
I've structured the day.
Yeah.
You give me 6 hour gap in the middle of the day,
yeah,
and I say the devil works. No, I'm running around creating hell, but maybe I make the choices that's a bit shit because I sit on my phone for a few hours, or I watch TV that I didn't really that fussed about watching because I didn't have this, because I had time.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fill it with something.
Yeah.
But you know, if you've already got structure and purpose, then like today for me, or yesterday, super busy days. So shit just got done. There wasn't time to think. And that's not saying we should never stop and think. It's just, you know what I mean? Like if you have that macro and it's all the time, you haven't got that much on, it just makes me think of that.
It's sort of planning stuff, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Planning your life and being organised is kind of key, which is a good point. I suppose with all this stuff, as human beings, we often are going to try and find the path of least resistance. We are going to go for, our default is always comfort. And comfort is sometimes doing what we've always done.
Yeah.
But doing what we've always done doesn't always bring happiness. So it's a bit of a crazy one to get your head around, but sometimes people's safety and security and comfort is actually being unhappy. It's safer for them to be unhappy. Again, maybe in an unhappy relationship because they've learned about relationships from their parents, and their parents are in an unhappy relationship, and to them, that's how relationships are. Now, all this stuff is subconscious. Not until you examine it, you see it. If your conscious brain will be like, what are you talking about? No, I am happy, blah, 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 blah. You'll give yourself a defense narrative, and you go a bit deeper, and you go, am I really happy? What am I covering up? What am I suppressing? We are all covering up and suppressing stuff. If you're human, you are doing it. It's part of human nature. But if we can uncover some blind spots and cover some extra self-awareness, maybe for some people they have a chance to be more happy.
We see it with some people. Let's take people who think they want to lose weight, but actually are more comfortable being overweight, part of their identity. We always think that safety mechanism is to say be better, be healthier, but change for a lot of people is far scarier than knowing where they're at, even if they're aware that it's unhealthy for them. It's still being there, as you say. And like an obvious one, just as PTs, might be the weight loss side of things. You know, there's people that self-sabotage on when they lose too much weight or go straight back up. They actually almost feel more comfortable. They've always been overweight.
Yeah.
And actually when they lose weight and they start getting compliments, actually some people feel incredibly uncomfortable with that. And it sounds weird, especially for personal trainers to get that. But it makes sense. You can understand how people feel like that. Because change is so difficult.
Well, it's easy to keep status quo, isn't it? It's always easy to keep status quo. And obviously, I think when it comes to weight loss and stuff...
Go to the camera.
It might have been, I'll check.
No? It's just set you off. Just try and shut you up from it.
Yeah, I thought about status quo and people being overweight as an example. And I think the longer I study psychology, I have so much compassion for people who've struggled with their weight for a long time. And there are so many layers as to why that might be the case. Now, even looking at deeply as trauma, sometimes putting on weight can be a reaction to trauma, and being overweight is more comfortable. It's safe because you don't get any tension. You don't want those tension because of really difficult things from your past. So, it's
another thing.
Very, very complex. And your chronic health conditions are always complex, aren't they? And we've talked a lot about that, whether it's chronic pain or autoimmune conditions or whatever. And we've tried to really have a reductionist approach. And our fitness industry, we've been terrible for obesity. Yeah. We've really reductionised it into just calories. Move more and eat less. And if it was as simple as that, great. But I tell you what, it's definitely not. And for people who've had long-term health issues, physically, mentally, emotionally, often a combination of all those mapped in together, moulded in together, then we need compassion, and we need to really understand there might be a lot of tools needed to help someone navigate forward, and it isn't just giving someone a nutritional program.
Well, no, that's another downfall of plentiful, though. Obesity is another pitfall of plentiful. You're not going to be obese in a society where there's no food.
Yes.
So while it's super complex in terms of psychologically what's going on, the reasons for it, and the difficulty in actually losing it, it's another pitfall of plentiful. Yeah. Plentiful isn't like you say of everything. It's not all pros.
No.
There's pros and cons to everything. Yeah. And that's another con of plentiful. If you're living in a part of the world where you can basically eat as much as you want, fairly... I mean, I know the food prices here are going up, but you can go and buy some shit. You can go buy like 5 donuts for £1.
Yeah.
If you go to your local supermarket. So you can pack a lot of calories in,
yeah.
But it's a pitfall of plentiful.
Yeah, and plentiful is a factor here to consider and to look at, and you can't take that out of the equation, but it's one part of the equation.
One part of it.
One part to consider and to be aware of.
Funny enough, in the medieval ages, it was actually seen as attractive to be overweight.
Yeah, because you're affluent.
You'd have to be affluent.
Yeah. There you go. Got a good gob of a belly.
Yeah.
You can't get the women away.
Henry VIII.
Yeah, Henry VIII. Yeah, he did it right.
Yeah, but it was a sign of obviously, wealth.
Yeah, because sign of abundance.
If you could put on a lot of weight in that time, didn't have highly processed, highly caloric food, so you'd have to go some to put some weight on.
Yeah,
and they did.
Yeah,
so
they did go some.
Yeah, they did go some. But it's interesting again. But that's how attitudes and things change. Because actually that was seen as attractive then because of what the sort of what it sort of showed about you as a person.
Yeah.
But yeah, another pitfall of plentiful.
It is, yeah. And I suppose when we think about some of these behaviours now as well, again, I suppose one key thing I've mentioned throughout the podcast today is how our brains are wired. We're kind of really just projecting our past onto our current situation. You might be with your partner, with your girlfriend, she might say, oh, we can't do this, that and that. And it's just because of her past and her stuff, and she's projecting that onto the here and now. Actually, the here and now, you're like, yeah, we can, it's okay. Well, you might say something to her.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, actually, I'm just bringing my past into this common context. It's only when we dig deeper, you wouldn't say it first, so you're like, no, James, it's all about this situation. Like, no, your perception of this situation is based upon your perceptions and your beliefs, which are formed from the past.
Yeah.
And if you connect where they are from the past, you have more awareness, and then you'll maybe catch yourself when you're projecting. We're all projecting all the time, but if we can catch ourselves when we're doing it, then again, our current reality might be less blurred. And I think that can offer a lot of value to us, because otherwise you're just going to repeat the same stuff. I know plenty of people in 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s who have exactly the same beliefs, see the world in exactly the same way, are so rigid, so dogmatic, and ultimately are the same people and have the same type of relationships than they did do 30 years previously. And for me, I think I feel quite sad for those people, because I think you could be missing out a lot on in life, a lot of growth and a lot of satisfaction and fulfillment. I personally feel, from my biased lens and my opinions, that you could be missing out on something. And that's why we've talked about therapy before, and I think a part of therapy is to look at your past and to look at it a little bit deeper and take some sort of ownership, if that's the right word. I suppose ownership on your current behaviours, but understand them as well a little bit from a compassionate standpoint.
It makes me think of when we think about past behaviours learned and then your present moment. It makes me think of an analogy in sports. And if you're trying to defend, let's say in football, what you're thinking about is what you've seen before when you've been in this position from a player and your current thing. So let's say Ronaldo's running at you in his heyday, not the current one, because you probably just tackle him. But in his heyday,
I wouldn't.
no, and you just let it go past, just bow. Yeah, is he? You got someone running at you, so you analyse the actual current situation, and then in the back of your mind is, well, what's happened when I've done this before? Have they cut inside? Have they gone outside? Have they nutsed me? And then you create a prediction of what's going to happen as you defend. And what really throws players, you'll see it when they're defending, is something new happens. A feint of the shoulder, an extra step over, another trick that really throws them. That's when people get mugged, because there's no prediction on it. So you've got your current situation, you've got what's happened in the past, so you figure out how you're going to defend it, and then something happens that you've never seen before, and that's when someone, like I say, falls on their arse or they just get completely mugged. But I think that's a nice analogy to use in the real world as well, because that's what you're doing all the time. Okay. Ronaldo's running at you, and you're thinking, right, what have I seen in the past, and I've built up this as my sort of previous experience, what is currently happening, and now I'm going to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that happens. We use it for everything.
If you study the brain enough, you'll see it's a predictive. The brain's a predictive thing.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, it predicts. But I suppose we repeat what we don't understand. And most of us don't understand ourselves very well. And we don't look deeply at ourselves. So you are just going to repeat stuff over and over again. And I know I hate to knock down the attitude of, I just need to get a grip. I just need to do it differently. I just need to have discipline. I just. It will be better when we have this holiday, when we have more money, when we have a bigger house, when we have kids, whatever the narrative is. Okay, I love that. I don't want to knock that down too much. But unfortunately, the same cycles will repeat in your life over and over again until you're brave enough to really look at yourself and work on yourself. And I'm just so passionate about that because I've seen people in my personal life and in my professional life repeat stuff over and over again, and ultimately, until I can encourage them to open that door and look at themselves, things don't truly change. And it's frustrating when they want something to change. I get it. I love the fact if people come to me and they're content and they're happy, great, cool. But a lot of people do want to change something in some shape or form, make some tweaks, or are frustrated about one area of their life. Then you've got to open that door and start with you and look at you. And the opportunity for myself was a silent retreat. But the opportunity that there is there for everyone is just to start with creating some silence, jump off that treadmill, maybe create an environment where you can talk to a really good friend or a good coach or a good therapist, and you can start to open up and share what's going on with you mentally. Then you have a chance to grow and as I'm saying today, live a better life.
Yeah. I think that's about us, mate. Solid. So, I hope that was really helpful. It was interesting to discuss it with you today, to see what you got from Silent Retreat. Hopefully it's piqued a few people's interest.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. If you're
I hadn't heard of one before.
If you're interested in it, ping me a message on Instagram and I'm happy to send you a link to the retreat.
But yeah, really interesting. And I think one of the things that I think is a great takeaway, something that I certainly will take away, is my own idea, actually, mate. The one you came up with is actually probably something to create a little bit more silence for myself. Actually, go and take a nice walk and leave your phone at home, or as you say, just pause it for 10 minutes. It's definitely something it feels fairly low grade entry, but something that could actually be pretty good for you.
Start small,
get big. Yeah,
that's my motto in life. That's what's got me where I am today, mate.
Start small, get big.
That's what I've always say.
But no, thank you for sharing that, mate, because that was very interesting. It was really interesting to go on that. And leave that one. Are we announcing our guest yet?
No, not yet.
All right, not yet. It's the 26th of Jan, so it won't be coming out till Feb. And then we'll come up with something special for the 100th. Don't know what it is.
We'll come up with something
maybe
creative.
Maybe we'll just go out for a meal.
Box.
Just me and you.
We'll think out the box, mate.
We'll think outside the box. 100th coming up. Right, guys, thank you for that, and we'll catch you next week.